Okay, let's begin our meditation with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend Beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar Ji, Beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda Ji, Saints of all religions, Beloved Swamiji, we humbly bow to you all. Divine Mother, meditate through us, chant through us, pray through us. We are your instruments. Help us in every way to deepen our attunement with thee. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother? What lightning flash glimmers in thy face? Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother? What lightning flash glimmers in thy face? Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother? What lightning flash glimmers in thy face? Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother? What lightning flash glimmers in thy face? Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother? What lightning flash glimmers in thy face? Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother? What lightning flash glimmers in thy face? Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother? What lightning flash glimmers in thy face? Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother? What lightning flash glimmers in thy face? Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother? What lightning flash glimmers in thy face? Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother? What lightning flash glimmers in thy face? Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother? What lightning flash glimmers in thy face? Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother? What lightning flash glimmers in thy face? Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. Om Bhurbhuvah Swaha Om Tatsavitu Varniyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Diyo yo na prachodayato. Om Bhurbhuva Swaha. Om Tatsavitu Varniyam. Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi. Diyo yo na prachodayato. Om Bhurbhuva Swaha. Om Tatsavitu Varniyam. Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi. Diyo yo naha prachodayato. Om Bhurbhuva Swaha. Om Tatsavitu Varniyam. Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi. Diyo yo naha prachodayato. Om Bhurbhuva Swaha. Om Tatsavitu Varniyam. Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi. Diyo yo naha prachodayato. Om Bhurbhuva Swaha. Om Tatsavitu Varniyam. Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi. Diyo yo naha prachodayato. Om Bhurbhuva Swaha. Om Tatsavitu Varniyam. Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi. Diyo yo naha prachodayato. Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivaranam Ovarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityo Mokshiyam Amritat Swaha. Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivaranam Ovarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityo Mokshiyam Amritat Swaha. Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivaranam Ovarukamiva Bandhanam Mrityo Mokshiyam Amritat Swaha. Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivaranam Ovarukamiva Bandhanam Mrityo Mokshiyam Amritat Swaha. Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivaranam Ovarukamiva Bandhanam Mrityo Mokshiyam Amritat Swaha. Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivaranam Ovarukamiva Bandhanam Mrityo Mokshiyam Amritat Swaha. Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivaranam Ovarukamiva Bandhanam Mrityo Mokshiyam Amritat Swaha. Om Swaha. Om Swaha. Om Swaha. O eternal fire of Om, we cast in thy flames of love all of our karma. Come to us, awaken us. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Please be seated. Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Paramahansa Yogananda Jai Guru Jai Paramahansa Yogananda Jai Guru Jai Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Paramahansa Yogananda Jai Guru Jai Paramahansa Yogananda Jai Guru Jai Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Paramahansa Yogananda Jai Guru Jai Paramahansa Yogananda Jai Guru Jai Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Paramahansa Yogananda Jai Guru Jai Paramahansa Yogananda Jai Guru Jai Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Paramahansa Yogananda Jai Guru Jai Paramahansa Yogananda Jai Guru Jai Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Paramahansa Yogananda Jai Guru Jai Paramahansa Yogananda Jai Guru Jai Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Paramahansa Yogananda Jai Guru Jai Paramahansa Yogananda Jai Guru Jai Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Paramahansa Yogananda Jai Guru Jai Paramahansa Yogananda Jai Guru Jai Paramahansa Yogananda Jai Guru Jai
Now let's meditate together. Again, inhale and tense the body. Vibrate, relax, and throw the breath out. Twice more. Calm the mind. Still the heart. And feel that Divine Mother is filling you with her love, with her bliss, with her compassion. Open your heart. Open your heart to her love and let it fill every part of your being, body, mind, and soul. Call to her at the spiritual eye. Reveal thyself. Reveal thyself as divine love, as divine compassion, and divine bliss. And then open your heart to experience her in every part of your being. We'll meditate for about 10 minutes. Om. 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 Shanti. Now, keeping this meditative state, just listen to these words of Swamiji from Affirmations for Self-Healing. This morning's affirmation is on positive thinking. As we think, so we become. And as we think, so our lives and circumstances become also. From the divine consciousness come answers to all our questions and solutions to all our problems. It is in lower consciousness that confusion reigns. Think positively in everything you do, for in that way, you help to attune yourself to the divine flow. One who is inwardly in tune with grace finds all things harmonious and beneficial being attracted to him. Positive thinking, combined with the sense of divine attunement, is never presumptuous, for it draws its power not from the ego, but from the consciousness of God's joy within. Now, please affirm with me, my outer life is a reflection.
My outer life is a reflection
Of my inner thoughts.
of my inner thoughts,
Filled with the joy of God.
filled with the joy of God.
I express his joy.
I express his joy
And harmony.
and harmony
In everything I do.
in everything I do.
My outer life is a reflection.
My outer life is a reflection
Of my inner thoughts.
of my inner thoughts,
Filled with the joy of God.
filled with the joy of God.
I express his joy.
I express his joy
And harmony.
and harmony
In everything I do.
in everything I do.
A little more quietly. My outer life is a reflection.
My outer life is a reflection
Of my inner thoughts.
of my inner thoughts,
Filled with the joy of God.
filled with the joy of God.
I express his joy.
I express his joy
And harmony.
and harmony
In everything I do.
in everything I do.
And now in a whisper, my outer life is a reflection of my inner thoughts, filled with the joy of God. I express his joy and harmony in everything I do. And now concentrate at the spiritual eye and take it into the super consciousness. My outer life is a reflection of my inner thoughts, filled with the joy of God. I express his joy and harmony in everything I do. My outer life is a reflection of my inner thoughts, filled with the joy of God. I express his joy and harmony in everything I do. And now silently pray with me. Problems cannot exist, Lord, whenever thou art near. Give me strength always to hold thee in my heart. Om Shanti Shanti.
Good morning to everyone and those that are tuning in online. This reading is from Whispers from Eternity by Paramahansa Yogananda, entitled, I baptize myself in the waters of my tears of love. Through long winding pathways of self-doubt, fording mighty rivers that separated thee from me, trudging over endless wastes of barren lives, tossing dangerously on the rapids of many ambitions, arduously climbing steep mountain trails of desire, and carefully extricating myself from whirlpools of alternating sadness and hilarity. At last, I have reached my journey's end. I look upon all those past travails with joy, every struggle, Every past agony has produced a flowing spring of joyous, grateful tears. In the sacred waters of those tears, I baptize myself daily with deep love for thee. And from the essence of self-realization, wisdom of Paramahansa Yogananda. A certain man was dying of diabetes. The doctor had given him only 3 months to live. He decided, if all that I have left to me is 3 months, let me spend them in seeking God. Gradually, he disciplined himself to sit in meditation for longer and longer periods every day. And all the while he kept praying, Lord, come into this broken temple. 3 months passed and he was still alive. A year passed. Continuing his intense prayers, he gradually increased his time of meditation to 18 hours a day. 2 more years passed. After 3 years, suddenly a great light filled his being. He was caught up in ecstasy. On returning from that divine state, he found that his body had been completely healed. Lord, he prayed, I didn't ask for a healing. All I asked was that you come to me. And the voice of the Lord answered, where my light is, there no darkness can dwell. The saint then wrote with his finger on the sand, and on this day, the Lord came into my broken temple and made it whole. On the spiritual path, we will know in life, we will know that there are many, many adventures. And then when we, at one point through really great good karma, we pierce the veil sufficiently to get inside, then we think, my goodness, now it's a double adventure. What am I going to do with this? I was having enough adventure, just treading water and so forth, doing all the things that I need to do. Now what am I going to do? And the miracle is this, is that those who help themselves, that work on disciplining themselves, serving selflessly, all those things, God helps. That's when he really, really, really takes charge of our lives, because we allow that. We have that great good karma to be open and receptive, such that then Divine Mother says, wonderful, as we like to joke around here, God doesn't have many employees. You know, and when he finds one, like perhaps like a child, he gets so enthusiastic, oh, this one is open to this grace. Let me work through them. And of course he does more and more, depending on our willingness to continue to be open to him. So again, life is a great adventure. When Yogananda first came to the West, and in time, 5 years later, 1925, he established Mount Washington as international headquarters. Then he began in so many ways to start cottage industries. He had a goat dairy, and in time he had a place there in Arboretum where he could begin to grow, I'm not sure what it was, various flowers for sale and papaya and all kinds of things. Many, many things he did. And when Swami started Ananda in the late 60s, he did the same. And one of the early cottage industries that numbers of us were a part of was a firewood company. We got a 1,000 cord contract. That's what you did then in California. Maybe you still do. And it was to thin the forest. And so we had a little firewood company, because there in Northern California, that was one of the ways, likely still is, to keep warm in the winter, because it snows there. It's not that it just snows up north in Srinagar. Northern California, you can get snow, up to here. That's no exaggeration. And so we had this firewood company, about a dozen of us out in the forest. It was great fun. I was a little younger then, in my mid-20s, and I was the foreman of the company and also the truck driver, because after we worked all day long and filling the truck, and it was a big deal because we were harvesting the wood on very steep slopes. So it took us quite a long time, 8-10 hours, just to fill the truck. And then a friend and I, off we would go. And it was an old truck. At one point, we retired it and got a rental truck that was brand new. And I'll tell you why, as the story goes on, why this was important. And so we would go. We had many customers. It was a company that was quite popular. And, prices were good. And we gave them a nice cord of wood, as it's called. And so anyway, off we went to deliver our wood. Well, at one point we are going up, and this town is called Nevada City, which is about 17 miles from Ananda Village, a very, very charming town. So we are going up this very steep hill, and the wood was green, which means it was extremely heavy. Dry wood is heavy too, especially oak wood, which we were harvesting. But when it's wet, it's extremely heavy. And we were having a little trouble with the brakes with that particular truck. But, we hope that we'd be able to get to the mechanic soon and get the brakes repaired. Well, as it worked out, as we were going up this very, very steep hill, all of a sudden there was a need. I wasn't driving, I was on the side. There was a passenger. The brakes began to fail. And he put his foot down, very steep hill. He put his foot down on the brakes, and there wasn't much there. And so he turned to me in a state of shock. Matter of fact, we turned to one another, and we thought that there was a possibility of a disaster, because bit by bit, we could feel that the truck, heavily loaded, would go back and then crash into buildings and God knows what. And we weren't keen on being a part of that adventure. And so what happened was just very, very spontaneous. I jumped out of the truck. I was in the passenger seat. I jumped out of the truck, climbed up the truck where all of the wood was, and started throwing trucks. I started throwing wood down on the ground. Well, any observer must have thought I had lost my mind, and probably best to, bring in the people with the white coats and take me off somewhere. What is this? A truck is slowly descending down a hill, and this crazy guy is in the truck. What is he thinking? He's going to take some of the load off so it won't go as fast down the hill? Well, it wasn't that at all. I had this thought that if I could throw down enough wood, I didn't have much time, maybe 6 or 8 pieces, then I could begin jamming them under the tires. And I didn't know if it would work, and I didn't know if I'd be run over in the process, but I thought, okay, die for a good cause. And so there it was. And it worked. And then bit by bit, the brakes began. They were very heated up, as is the custom when brakes are, how you say, not functioning all that well. And then we drove home. And I thought to myself, it's so sweet on the spiritual path, because bit by bit, through meditation, through our seva, through positive thinking, whatever it might be, we have this joyous expectation that God will come to the rescue in any situation. I don't care what it is. God will come to the rescue to help us if we just stay open and have that faith. And so I didn't think it out at all. It just was the snap of the fingers. This is what to do. And it worked. It might have not worked. The truck might have just ran over the wood and laughed at me and crashed into a nearby building. But who knows what was happening? Maybe some angels were also thinking, the wood is doing no good. We'll help. And maybe half a dozen angels came and held the truck back. A miracle after miracle has happened in all of our lives. And at Ananda, we have so many. And what is a miracle? It's a miracle really to be doing our sadhana. It really is. It's a miracle to do what we can to think positively. It's a miracle to appreciate the great gift that we have been given in life, which is the inner life. And so bit by bit, we begin to appreciate there is no way, as Swami Kriyananda has said many times when people have said, oh my gosh, you know, you're such a prolific author and composer and all those things. And he said, you know, I didn't do any of it. I didn't do any of it. And he's not affirming. It's an absolute fact that when we are in a flow, when we're in a positive flow, we, with great humility, we appreciate that truly it's the case. We're not doing anything. I've been having fun recently because we're all, you know, on this path of Raja Yoga. We're also Gyanis, you know, Bhaktis, Karma Yogis. And so as a Gyani, I've been trying to figure out, trying to observe, trying to challenge the ego to see if it can claim responsibility for anything, anything. Can it claim responsibility for a positive or a negative thought? Can it claim responsibility for some emotion, any activity? And so I've been doing this for some time. I haven't found anything that it can claim. Why? Because God's a director and playing all parts. And what does that do for us, these introspection exercises? It begins to help us bit by bit to let go and let God, because God's doing everything anyway. We might as well acknowledge it. That's the only loose end. It's not easy with the things that go wrong. But what did Yogananda say? Give God your mistakes. He likes that. And when I read that, I thought, he does? What would he like that for? But he's the director and playing all parts. And so these great saints realize this dilemma that we're in trying to constantly remember, smriti, memory, that we're children of God and we're in a state of perfection. And at the same time, we have this loose end. And this loose end is though that we are free, and we are right now, though we're free, we haven't awakened to that freedom. There's a beautiful tape. If you haven't heard these wonderful tapes of Yogananda, they're in YouTube. There's many, they're just 3 to 5 minutes long, drawn from larger tapes. And it was many, many years till we could hear a clear audio of Yogananda. The technology wasn't up to speed, but now it's absolutely excellent. And so Yogananda in this particular talk, and he said he likes to give illustrations of movies because this is a big movie. He's called it a super talkie. This is a big movie. So he said, I give many illustrations of movies. And so at one point he was saying, he was talking to God. And he said to God, he said, God, I understand that this is a movie and this is a dream. But down there, all of those that are watching the movie, they're howling. They're howling because of the spectacle. What should I do? Yogananda feeling this compassion. He says, I'm awake from the dream. I know now, but I need to help you all. They're howling down there. What shall I do? And God spoke to him and said, tell them to look back at the beam. That was all that was necessary. Remind them that it's a play of shadow and light. Look back at the beam coming from the projection booth of eternity. And here it is, right here. You know, look up at the beam. Look up at the beam. And we find that the power of this experience, as well as we're engaging our hearts, because you want to have both, love, will, you put that combination together, you have joy, and joy is all protective. As we continue to not side, and it's very, very tempting because the ego, the Maya, has its own wisdom. And many, many times it will convince us for long periods of time that we have a right to be grumpy. You know, we have a right, you know, to complain. I don't know how long it was. Certainly it was weeks and months and maybe longer in my early years. All I could do was shake my fist at God because I didn't think he was participating. That was it. It really stuck in my craw that I didn't think God was participating. My image of God was he was on a cloud. He was throwing rocks down. Whenever he got a direct hit, he laughed and thought that was wonderful. And that wasn't very charitable, but that was my bad attitude at the time, and embarrassing. I certainly didn't tell anybody about that, because here I was at Ananda, and if I started to maybe share some of these inner thoughts, he might have thrown me out. So I thought, well, just keep it to myself, just, work it through, maybe talk to the head monk, because I was a monk at the time, maybe not. Most of it was just going through the process, knowing that it was going to take time. But bit by bit, like the thought of God's a director playing all parts, things along these lines, it's a dream, etc., that actually, and as Yogananda said, I live in your heart, bit by bit, then I began to drop this silly cartoon image of God having fun throwing rocks down on our heads, especially gleeful when he made a direct hit. I just thought, I don't think I should have that image any longer. I don't think it's helpful for me spiritually. So let's let it go. Let's replace it. Because if you want, as Yogananda said, if you want to replace a bad habit, just go in the opposite direction. That's all. Very, very simple image is you're on the couch and you have a hard time getting off the couch. So you get off the couch. And, it's God's grace that you were able to do that, because you didn't want to get off the couch. You had a nice book. You were comfortable. You'd been working hard mowing the lawn. And yet there was this feeling inside, now it's time to do the other thing. The soul was telling you. Divine Mother was prompting you. Now you do this other thing. Someone's knocking at the door. Answer the door. Don't continue to stay on the couch. The guest is God. Okay, what shall I do? I need to put out some energy. And so for us, bit by bit, we begin to appreciate that if we take one step toward God, then he will say, very good. I think this guy has a potential of being good today. As Sri Yukteswar said, learn to behave. And God gets very enthusiastic when we cooperate with him in any way. A disciplined mind's a happy mind, keeping our heart open, doing our seva, nishkam karma, so many things we can do. And also it's very comforting to appreciate that if we do, as Yogananda said, just a percentage, he said, if you just do a percentage of what I asked you to do, you'll get there. And I thought, that's for me, because otherwise it's just overwhelming. Just overwhelming. You think there's just too much to do. How am I ever going to get it all done? I won't be able to sleep. I won't be able to eat. Won't be able to have any fun. In trying to follow to the letter and being some kind of a super Olympian to do all these things, it's not necessary. That's why January 1st, time to make our resolutions. And we can still dust off our resolution if that's a good thing to do, if it's gotten a little dusty and put on the shelf. A month has passed. Then we begin to use our intuition, which is the fruit of meditation. What should I be focusing on? It may be just as simple as maybe I should do a little bit more for the neighborhood. In America, we have block parties. And I never heard of those before, but when I was little, someone said, we're having a block party. All I could think of was blocks, and parties. Putting the two together, I couldn't understand. So naturally, I had to ask, what on earth is a block party? Oh, we all get together and we do projects and maybe, mow lawns and help people, maybe paint their house and have a nice dinner afterwards and a movie. And I said, I think I like block parties. And I did. And we had, numbers of them when I was growing up. Well, perhaps in part, that's why Yogananda was so keen on World Brotherhood Colonies, because it's a full-time 24/7 block party. Always ways, to help uplift, do what we can. And by doing that, by acting as a good instrument and more as a pure instrument, we find that the instrument is blessed by that which flows through it. And it's not so difficult then to constantly get back to center. And to get back to center, initially, no question about it. When we get on the spiritual path, it's a big job for most. And that's why Yogananda said that if we could retain the honeymoon, time to swallow. Good. If we could retain the honeymoon period that honeymoon period when we first read that book, that friend came up to us and said, oh, there's a lecture in town. Perhaps you'd like to attend. And it turned out to be, something near and dear to us. It changed us. If we could retain that honeymoon period, we'd find God very quickly. And that's a good thing to keep in mind. And that's why it's so important as we grow and grow in our meditation, in our seva, to say, before I tackle this problem, let me lift my consciousness. As in this fabulous reading, when our consciousness is down, that is not the time to say, I wonder if there's any solutions. We're in the brush. Right now is to get out of the brush and get to the top of the mountain. Then we find half the time the problems are gone. Because every problem, incredibly, another miracle, every problem has a solution built right in the problem. And I don't care what the problem is. The solution is there. Test it, and you'll find it's the case. And that's why Gyaya Namata, Yogananda's most advanced woman disciple, said, if I could give anything to the disciples, it would be right attitude. Because with right attitude, there's that joyous expectation that there is a solution. There is some way that I can regroup with these habits that are starting to creep in that are not good for me, etc., etc. There was a fellow that came the other day and new on the path. And he said, I find it so disheartening. I'm getting so enthusiastic about what I found, this treasure inside, the portable paradise inside. But when I talk to my friends and relatives, they're not interested. And I said, you're not the only one. We love them. We love them. They're near and dear. But as Swami's own brother, at one point, Swami wanted to, give him a little hand, maybe he gave him the autobiography of Yogi. And he said, Don, as Swami was named, Don, James Donald Walters, Don, frankly, I'm not interested. Did Swami try a second time? No, because that needs to be respected. That's okay. He was a good man. He was teacher of the year at one point there in California. He just wasn't interested in that. He wasn't ripe yet. He wasn't at that point where he felt, okay, this is now my next step. But for all of us that have an inner life, it's just a matter of having that growing trust. And that's what it takes. That somehow, as God was able to get us through this labyrinth with our outer life prior to discovering the inner life, He probably can do the inner life and the outer life simultaneously. It's why when we were a teacher in corporate to these multinationals all over India some years back, they had two issues. One, they had no time. That was an easy one to solve. You watch television, their head would go down. We didn't even have to finish the sentence, they had time. It's just interest, preference, all of that. But the second one was a little bit more difficult because the mindset was very, very strong that I will seek God. Many of them appreciated the inner life was very important, but it was being postponed till they were 80 or something. At that point, they may be dead. And that would be, a real troublesome for them. But we said, something, you can do both. You can keep the lights on. At the same time, you can work on brightening your inner life. And it was a revelation to them. And we bargained with them. Of course, Yogananda and Swami always bargaining with people. Just meditate for 2 minutes. And so that's what we would say to them. Just meditate for a few minutes. And because we would go back, from time to time to these companies where there was, a real esprit de corps. And this one particular time, after we had taught them to meditate and so forth, he said, at the break, can I share something with you? I said, oh, absolutely. He said, something? When I used to come home, I would hear the whole house scattering and they would be going to their various rooms because the bear had come home, And so, my God, don't face the bear. And so that was, the routine. It was, sad for me because I wanted to greet my family, but I guess I was a bear. Come to think of it, now that I've learned to meditate and my heart is open and so forth. You know what they do now? They greet me at the door. If nothing else came from this practice of meditation, it would be my family greets me at the door. They don't see a bear now, they see a lamb, and it's so sweet. It's so sweet. And in many times that we would spend with these guys, they would tell us all of these fabulous experiences they had just by beginning a little bit of meditation. And sometimes they would say to us when we would come back, oh, I'm a little embarrassed, I'm only meditating 5 minutes. We'd say 5 minutes is fantastic. Very, very good. Meditate 5 minutes. Meditate 5 minutes once a week. Meditate 5 minutes every other day, anything. And what you'll find is that magnetism, because it's all magnetism, will begin bit by bit to work on you. And then pretty soon, as Swami Kriyananda said, I don't see how people can even live without meditation. Why? Because we go inside and taste of our own reality. And what is that reality? That reality is joy. And joy is God, and God is joy. And that joy is pretty handy to have when you're going through the labyrinth of life. What is there? Love. What is there? Light, wisdom, all of the spiritual qualities. Very handy, very practical. Very practical to go inside, drink and drink of your own soul nature, and then come out and share it. That's the fruit of meditation. And that's why he could say, I don't know how people can even live without meditation, but we have to be ripe. And usually that takes a bit of pain. As Yogananda said, this is a dream, true. But if you hit your dream head on a dream wall, you experience dream pain. And so, yes, we can say, as philosophers, this is just a dream, whatever, and we can do whatever we want. But if we act the part of a villain, then we get the villain's reward. If we're acting adharmically, whatever it might be, and that reward is not pleasant. But if we have the white hat on, and we're doing what we can to do dharma, and to extend ourselves, and to have compassion, all the various things that we know on the spiritual path that are so important. And great fruit comes from being in tune, because as we're attuned, then God can work through us. In the early years, I thought to myself, again, being so new, that Jesus Christ, Krishna, that was thousands of years ago. You call on them and, thousands of years ago, that's when they lived. What, they're going to come? But what is it to be a yogi? It's a matter of testing to be a scientist. So I thought, well, let's give it a try. Christ, come to me. Next thing I knew, there was a little something, bubbling inside. Oh my gosh. And so I persevered in that, as we all have. And we find that these great ones, they lived thousands of years ago, but they're omnipresent. They've got the power to banish time and space and to help us in so many ways. They are there for us. They're only a thought away. And so we have to continue to persevere with joy. We have to grow and grow and grow and grow, but especially with that inner motive that we are growing in joy and we're growing in love so that we can help. Because so many people in this world need help. And we don't know, as our inner life begins to grow and to flourish, we don't know how many people, just by being kind, somehow their life has changed. We go to the grocery store and we say, oh, thank you so much. Oh, these apples, they look so good. And all of a sudden, the fellow just brightens up. What did we do? We just shared a little bit of a lift by saying his apples look good. We had time for that as we walked out of the store with our groceries. So we become more and more aware of states of consciousness. And as we see people that maybe their back is bent a bit and maybe their eyes are reflecting some sorrow, then we, as Yogananda recommended, shoot them with the bullets of joy. And we find that by doing that, our own consciousness is lifted because we begin to cross that bridge. That is my own self that I'm beholding. There's no separation. That's Maya. There's none. And when we wake up from this dream in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, some fine day, which is our destiny, then we will see, my gosh, there I was spending time thinking everything was separate, and it was just a dream. There's no separation. It's one. And so how fortunate we are that somehow we have found a way to do two things at once. And of course, bit by bit, they're merging as one. We have this outer life, which keeps us plenty occupied, but somehow we have a little bit left over for our inner life. And more we're finding miracle of miracles that our inner life and outer life are merging. As Swami Kriyananda said, he's at the point now where he doesn't even know whether it's Yogananda's thoughts or his own. Such is the attunement with his guru. And as our attunement grows, then there won't be this thought of, am I being ego-driven? Am I being spirit-driven? God is the doer. He's doing everything. Give it all to him. As Yogananda pointed out, that's the key. That's the shortcut. Self-offering. Give everything to God. And we will find more and more he comes to our aid. And more we will know that he is always with us. You can't get any closer than having Divine Mother and the great ones in our own hearts. So God bless you. We'll now stand and have our Aarti. Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Shri Ram, 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 Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram.
Now we'd like to invite those of you who feel to come up to the altar to receive the touch of light from the Masters. And as we approach, offer a prayer of gratitude to the infinite Christ, in whose love our line of Masters have descended, that we might all come to God. We pray too for the grace to share with all as you have received, for you are part of all of this. And the light of the great Master shine upon you.
Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. I never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. Shri Om Guide to inner freedom, steal into my heart of hearts, vanish my delusion. Shri Yogananda, guide to inner freedom, steal into my heart of hearts, vanish my delusion. Sri Yogananda, guide to inner freedom, steal into my heart of hearts, vanish my delusion. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Hare Krishna Hare Ram, Shri Radhe Govinda. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Hare Krishna Hare Ram, Shri Radhe Govinda. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Hare Krishna Hare Ram, Shri Radhe Govinda. Shri Yogananda, guide to inner freedom, into my heart of hearts, vanish my delusion. Shri Yogananda, guide to inner freedom, steal into my heart of hearts, vanish my delusion. Shri Yogananda, guide to inner freedom, steal into my heart of hearts, vanish my delusion. I am the one who make me the sea, Lord, I am the one who make me the sea. Make me the sea, make me the sea, make me the sea, oh make me the sea. Wave of the sea, dissolve in the sea. Wave of the sea, dissolve in the sea. Oh, I am the one who make me the sea, Lord, I am the one who make me the sea. So will you thou, my Lord, so will you thou, my Lord, thou and I never apart, thou and I never apart. Wave of the sea, dissolve in the sea. Wave of the sea, dissolve in the sea. Oh, I am the bug, will make me the sea. Lord, I am the bug, will make me the sea. I am the bug, will make me the sea. Lord, I am the bug, will make me the sea. I am the bug, will make me the sea. Lord, I am the bug, will make me the sea. I am the bug, will make me the
Now let's close our satsang with a healing prayer. Visualize all those who need a healing energy in their bodies, their minds, and their souls. Those that you know, and all those you don't. All over the world, bless this planet with Divine Mother's healing power and love. Ask Master to use you as an instrument for this love as we pray together. Divine Mother, thou art omnipresent. Thou art in all thy children. Thou art in all these souls. Manifest thy healing presence in their bodies, in their minds, and in their souls. Go out with joy.